So I was diagnosed with high functioning autism in March 2015. Prior to that, my mental health had been particularly severely affected since the birth of my son, which was July 2012. In the period of time between 2012 and 2015, I had spent a number of times in hospital under the care of the crisis team, in A&E with various requirements for supervision, and because I'd self-harmed. And in October 2016, so this time last year, I was diagnosed with dyspraxia. Particularly before my autism diagnosis, we had very little to go on in terms of what the triggers were. I was regularly suicidal. I used to reach the point where I was unable to cope and would self-harm or medicate with drugs, prescription drugs on the whole, and alcohol, if I kind of reached a meltdown point. But it kind of affected the functioning of the whole family. Mark had to give up full-time work in order to care for me, and also because I couldn't cope with the demands of a young child on our own. And really our whole focus for about the first 3.5 years of Milo's life was getting through on a day by day or hour by hour basis, and really mine and Mark's focus was about making sure that my mental health problems were kept as far away from Milo as possible so that they didn't affect his functioning, his development. But the outset of that would be that often everything went into him. Certainly in terms of my personal resources, you know, I was focused on making sure I was responding appropriately and I was picking up on the cues that he needed. But that meant that there was nothing left for me. Certainly since my occupational therapy treatment, things have stabilised. I've worked with the recovery team in Derby, but increasingly what we found is that the kind of granular understanding of my conditions and how they present, and the understanding that we've been able to gather amongst my family and my kind of informal support network, so my personal assistants and my wider family, has meant that gradually we are slowly reducing the services in terms of needing less resources, and the time and the resources that are put into us as a family are much more successful for that reason. The benefit that I have gathered from it in terms of the fact that after 6-7 months of treatment, I'm now at the point where I'm being discharged from secondary mental health care, because the support that they are able to offer me, frankly, is less appropriate than the ongoing occupational therapy which I'm receiving. And the other thing that we found is that although I have had one placement in an inpatient facility in February, the resources required to treat me at that time, and also the recovery time that I experienced, was hugely foreshortened. I would estimate that the recovery time that I experienced was probably 1/3 to 1/2 of what it would have been prior to the beginning of the occupational therapy, just because I understand my triggers, I understand how to treat myself better and with more kindness, and so do my family and support network.
Since she's had the diagnosis and then moved on to the support courses and doctors, and I forget the names of all the different courses and treatments and stuff that she's had, but because there's been so many, but they now have started to come to a head where they're starting to work, and the facility has helped us identify the problems, the issues, and try to keep her on an even keel. And without the NHS and without the support, it would have been, but it'd still be ongoing now. The crises, the collapses and the breakdowns would probably have pulled us apart.